Hi, my name's Philip Byther. I'm the curator for performing arts here at the Walker Art Center, and to my left is Kristen Brogdon, who's the director of artistic and community programs at Northrop at the University of Minnesota. And to Kristen's left is Shamel Pitts, fantastic choreographer, educator, director of a collective called Tribe, and an artist who Northrop and the Walker made a 3-year commitment to. We are now here at our third and final year, with tonight the world premiere of a major new work called Marks of Red. Shamel has been here for the full week working on the work, finalizing, and your whole team, the work, and we all simply can't wait to see the results tonight and then tomorrow night. And I'd just like to start by, Shamel, asking how are you feeling just a few hours away from unveiling the premiere of Marks of Red?
Yeah, I'm feeling many things at once. Feeling energized, grateful, surprise is an emotion I'm feeling.
Surprise, and if you don't mind my asking, what way?
Yeah, let's see what happens. You know, this sense of surprise, because I always have this sense when creating work that it's sort of birthing something unknown into existence, and when it's born, which it will be today, the work, then I get to sort of see what it is. You know, I do my best in the creation process of the work to create the conditions so that when the thing is born, it's healthy, it's alive, but only the moment of its birth I get to see what it really is, and then see also what it becomes. So yeah, there are many mixed emotions right now. I'm really feeling also fortified and in gratitude for this opportunity and commitment from Northrop and Walker, from you, Philip, and you, Kristen, and the incredible collaboration of my artistic team.
Yeah. Well,
another one of the things that is new and potentially surprising is the fact that this is the first work that you are creating for Tribe that you're not performing in. So how does that role shift change your relationship with the work, both intellectually and physically?
You know, I really identify as a dancer. And I've been dancing my whole life before even training. You know, my mother threw a lot of parties growing up. So I was always up late at night dancing with adults as a kid. And, you know, that love for dance, for moving my body, led me to being a performer. However, with Marks of Red, I knew that because of a lot of the content of the work that my body wasn't needed there. And I also felt and feel that it was the right decision. I think that I feel that I'm not missing out actually by being a performance out of the work. I think the performers that are there, these 6 formidable dance artists, carry the work to such magnificence and sublimation. And I'm really into sort of orbiting in and out and around the work with the designers that are part of it as well. It's a bit strange for me to see my work for the first time from the outside. It's very revealing and exposing and puts me in a very vulnerable place. I would feel much more comfortable performing actually. But I think that physically, I feel satisfied, and this is also sort of a new beginning for me that creates curiosity in terms of my part in the works that I create.
You also, with this work, have chosen to work with 6 amazing Black femme artists. So, of course, and part of the content is around a womb space, a safe space, the notions of motherhood and giving birth to or caring for a child in your one's own body. And how how did you land on that? And how did you find the 6 remarkable women who are in the work?
Yeah, I found each of the women in this work from different places. And I would actually say that there's this Rumi quote, that which you are seeking is seeking you. So I would say we found each other. We found each other in different dance classes. We found each other in administrative collaborations. We found each other at nightclubs, dancing to techno until the morning. So I became, my relationship with each of the women was very distinct, you know, like one-on-one. They didn't know each other that closely before. They hadn't danced together before. I hadn't worked with a lot of them before, but I felt so profoundly connected and curious and intrigued by each of them that I somehow created this constellation of 6 really powerful, distinct women. And I, at these times with Marks of Red, have also been curious about refuge and seeking refuge through going back to the beginning of my existence, which has led me to my mother. There's this also quote, I'm full of quotes.
That's good.
They come to me, Katsuo Ono, who's one of the creators of butoh, which is a dance born from Japan, which translates to dance of utter darkness. He usually says that when he dances, he tries to trace his memories all the way back to his mother's womb. And I felt that I was like, it's my words, you know, that I really connect to that relationship to dancing from the most primal, instinctual, initial rupture space. So I think with my relationship between each of the women and my relationship to Black women who mothered me, my mother passed away when I was 16. And since then, my aunts and grandparents and teachers, all of these women really showed such a pronounced amount of care and cultivation of my possibilities of becoming that I wanted to, in this work, sort of dig into that, honor that, and create a space that highlights that.
Hearing each of the dancers speak the other night, they are so committed to you and your vision. And I found that quite remarkable, given that it's not easy to build a company in less than a year or a year and a half and create such a sense of devotion. And almost it felt like between them a sense of family. Was that consciously, you know, a part of what you used strategies to achieve, or did it just come from their respective, you and their respective one another working?
Yeah, it was one of my biggest fears in creating this work with these 6 women who are just getting to know each other. The fear was, you know, how would they vibe with each other in this space? How would I vibe with them as well? But how would, you know, they create this collective and care with each other? You know, because dancers are dynamic people and companies are dynamic spaces. But I think the quality of a collective or a tribe is a sense of purpose that each one needs to bring towards the totality of the larger thing. And I know that there's a huge amount of respect and love that they have for me, and an immense amount of respect, commitment, care that they have for one another. And it's so loud and pronounced in its care that it's remarkable to witness how they love on each other.
That was very evident in the community gathering. So, and it's not challenging as a man. There's no gender tension to make a work about women, but being a man.
Yeah, I don't think this work is about Black women.
Right.
I think it's with women. I cannot make a work from the viewpoint of Black women. I think that And my relationship to them is with an awareness of, and curiosity of my positioning as a Black queer man, and how I'm relating to, as a choreographer, to create a work with 6 Black femme. So I think that I always work with dancers, collaborators, designers, staff, in a way that's not hierarchical. I'm really curious of this quality of leading without having followers, that we all sort of share this horizontal way of doing the thing together. And I think that became paramount with my intentions of how I show up to this space with these dancers, and how I give or let go of space in a way that doesn't centralize me, but centralize them inside of the work.
Thank you.
Shamel, one of the things that I'm also curious about, especially on the day of a premiere, is how that energy that the dancers create and also the themes of the work will kind of flow out into the audience as it becomes birthed, as you said before. I think that the work becomes more real when it has an audience to absorb and reflect it. So how are you imagining those themes of growth and transformation and that energy that the dancers share with each other might seep out into the audience?
Yeah, I always create works with the audience in mind and heart from the beginning, because this is live performance and the performance needs live audience. So I'm always curious about the relationship between the audience and the performers. And with this work, because it's sort of inhabited in this cocoon space, right? There's a lot of energy and embraced by the set design that seems to be enclosed and spread throughout the set design and through the dancers' intense physicality and very heart-breaking and warming emotional capacity and vast humanity that's very much moving through the space of the stage. And then somehow there's also this really clear sort of leaking out both directions in terms of energy from the audience and the dancers and the dancers in the audience. I think that relationship and tethering that happens between the dancers and audience members will become really palpable, tangible tonight.
Would you want to mention or tell us about one of the strategies it seems like you've employed, which is the ladies in red in the communities that you travel to? We have some wonderful kind of leading force women selected to be part of the next 2 nights, but can you tell us what the intent and what you're doing with them?
Yeah, whenever I go, I'm on tour performing, I'm always curious to be engaged with the audiences and communities of the place that I'm in. And so this idea with Ladies in Red is multifold and multi-purpose. One, it's an excuse for me to meet with community members. And also, it allows me to further experiment socially with the sort of agency and relationship, participation, activation of the audience. Mm-hmm. So the Ladies in Red, what I sort of proposed was that in each city, for each performance, I would ask amazing presenters and their partners to sort of ask audience members if they'd be interested in participating in the performance as a lady in red. And part of the prompt was, in terms of how to identify these ladies, was sharing with them some of the content of the work itself, which has to do with womb space, which has to do with mothering, caring for something, carrying something into existence, has to do with labor and sort of I call it like the tensioned tethering between. So I think that, the ladies in reds are in some way plants, inside of the performance, but however, they're audience members who are a bit more activated in this performance. And I think that I'm trying to sense, it's an experiment, let's see what happens. I'm trying to sense what does it mean to be in this dialogue between audience and performers, that it's not, in my work, hopefully, one direction. It's not an entertainment that is to be experienced in one way. It's that we're in dialogue with each other for the entirety of our time together, and we've all agreed and consented to be in this sort of activation and participation. So how can I, in some ways, highlight that concept through the ladies in red, and maybe I have curiosities around what that does to the experience of audience members moving forward, beyond the ladies in red.
I know that some were a little bit hesitant, like, do I have to perform, or do I need, am I going to be seen by everyone? Was that part of how, did you you built a role for them that wasn't too intimidating or things?
No, I wanted to make clear, I'm trying to share clearly with them that they are audience members.
Right.
And similar to what I was saying, that as an audience member, to me, trying to, there is a sense of presence in the performance, and the presence and energies goes both directions. I think part of the range that I was looking for in the ladies in red are connected to the range of diversity. So it's, I think we have lady in red that's 93, 94.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and some younger dancers, some people who are art lovers, some people who are doulas, some people who are community organizers. So not so many performers necessarily. So my choreography, an invitation for the ladies in red, is with an awareness of that range. So it's, I think it's going to be okay.
It's been really nice, I think, for presenters to be able, Northrop and Walker staff members, Maria and Julie Voigt, got together, and we were able to select people in our community to invite, women, and it was sort of became like we'd like to pay honor, pay homage to leaders in or people who are distinctively interesting and just are important in our community, and so it really allowed that gesture too.
Yeah, I love the fact that it acknowledges the role that an audience member has in a performance, and also I think it will feel really fruitful because of the 3 years that you've spent here intermittently in Minneapolis. And so, one of the other things I would love to hear you talk about is, over the course of these 3 years, I think that we've tried all together really intentionally to make sure that you have a sense of community and a sense of home here. We've had community gatherings, you've offered workshops, there have been these opportunities to connect with folks outside the performance. Now it's coming inside the performance. But would love to just hear your reflections on having spent 3 consecutive times in March in Minneapolis, in both of our theaters, working with the people who are on our team, your team being a part of that relationship, and just like what has that meant and what does it feel like to have that arc of extended time, with kind of drop-in visits, but the connective tissue in between of the conversation and relationship. How has that 3-year arc been for you?
This arc has been incredibly worthwhile and beyond my wildest dreams. I've never had a relationship, a commitment before as we've had together. The 3-year commitment and relationship that you both offered to me and to my collective tribe is the biggest gift of my artistic life, and has helped me grow has helped me feel seen, has resourced me, and I've been incredibly, I think, well fed by being in community with the communities here over the past 3 years. One of my favorite moments is coming back on day one. Wasn't day one this year because there was a blizzard. So, but coming back here and having this welcoming gathering with the community, I met so many interesting people. I love that the welcome gathering was a lot about not only me sharing who I am and what I'm doing and what tribe members are doing, but really, the curiosity to hear what people in this community are doing and how they're doing, what they're doing, how they're doing it. It's been really inspiring, and the sort of relationships that I've created with some of them over the 3 years have extended between the times that I've been here. So I feel that I feel tethered to the community in Minneapolis as well.
You mentioned it's been wonderful to have these welcoming gatherings, and each year they grow a bit more.
Yeah.
This year we had nearly 50 people turn out, and that was after changing the dates, at the last minute because of the blizzard. But it also comes on the heels of federal immigration crackdown and brutal, really, trauma and caused to these communities that we care so much about in the Twin Cities. And I think a lot of people felt welcome, in part perhaps because of your manner and your company, to share pretty honest and heartfelt feelings about how they are faring and what they just went through with 2 murders and with many community members under attack or being surveilled. I'm sure you sense what a difficult time it's been for the Twin Cities. What was your sense after those, what was going to be 90 minutes and became 3.5 hours or something, conversations around that table just the other night?
It was a very generous conversation, a very candid, compassionate offering from people there. It was a lot to receive, and I'm so happy that I feel so fortunate to have received it, because I can only imagine what people here have been going through this year because of ICE and the murders, and also previous years with the murder of George Floyd, and Minnesotans have led 2 global protests in 6 years or so, which is wild. And also a testament, I will say, to the power of Minnesotans. I've been seeing things, excuse me, that have been happening here from afar. And what I've noticed and what I feel is, such devastation for y'all to have to go through this, and at the same time, I'm like, Minnesotans are my heroes. They're such an example of how to care for each other and look out for each other against the evils and bullshit and racism and destruction and chaos that these governments are creating. I will say that, the sense of trauma, because that came up a lot in the conversation the other day with the 50 members. I'd say there is something in Marks of Red that feels turbulent and also dealing with traumatic events. I would even say, the first trauma for all of us is probably when we're cut from our mother's umbilical cord. It's the moment where we're alone. And what does it mean to be one? And what does it mean to understand too that trauma is a part of our experience without being managed by it completely. And I think that this sense of regeneration through devastation has become really inspiring with the community gathering, as well as I think in my work is what I'm trying to offer or investigate.
One of the things that I have noticed over the course of the last couple of months is that both the trauma and the strength and community that have been built in Minnesota have really led people to want to gather together in the theater and to experience that sense of connection, sometimes a sense of joy, sometimes a collective catharsis. And that's leading me back to the environment that you and your team are creating inside the theater. And I am curious to hear your current thoughts about the work that you've been doing with Mimi Lien on creating the set for this piece, which is gorgeous and expansive and feels made for the Walker Theater space. And then also your other collaborators, Luca with projection and other people who you've worked with sound. But if you could start with Mimi and talk about the environment that you and she have created in the theater.
Yes, Mimi's set design is made for the Walker. She literally made a small miniature model of it that we've been working with, a small miniature model of the Walker's theater that we've been working with for the last year in terms of understanding what the scenic design will become. So it's modeled for this theater, which is cool. Yeah. Although it can fit in any theater.
And that explains, it really looks like it's part of the theater.
Yeah,
It's incredible.
Yeah, Mimi and I first worked together on a play called Help that was by playwright Claudia Rankin. And Mimi was the set designer, and I was the choreographer. The play premiered at the Shed in 2021. And it was the first time I met Mimi, and I was so inspired by her brilliance. She's in her power of collaboration. She's a listener. She offers very sort of contextual, intellectual, conceptual gems immediately, and she's just one of the most brilliant artists I've ever got to work with. So after working with her at Help, I invited her to be the set designer for Touch of Red, which we performed last year at Northrop. And then this year, again for Marks of Red, I'm interested in long-term relationships with people that I work with. So hopefully Mimi and I will walk together. We'll continue walking together. I think for Marks of Red, how the process went with Mimi is that I have some ideas of the work from the beginning. Like for example, I would say womb space. I grab some words, and then I start sharing them. And I shared some words with Mimi, and then she just amplifies the idea beyond what I could imagine. And it's very collaborative through the entire process. So, she's really, especially in regards to my work and the work we do together, she's very much able to create this sort of very futuristic landscape that is also has capacity for humanity inside of it. It feels human at the same time, and I love that in her work there's always movement in her set designs, that it's not static, regardless of the materiality of the design itself. We always work with this architecture's life forms.
It's so, we combined with Luca's projection work and the sculptural nature, which really feels, as we said, like an extension of the entire theater going deep into it. So almost like a inside of a human body or hiking in the Southwest or something. Mm-hmm. And then the projections just turn it into brand new worlds. How did you find the balance between the bodies and the choreography and the stunning visual design that they operate within?
Luca Del Carlo, the video projection designer, him and I have been working together since 2016. We met in Brazil, and I was creating another work there called Black Velvet. And since then, he's moved to New York, and we've been working together for the past 10 years. So Luca and I have a very deep understanding of how we create together and our purpose and where we're going. We almost speak a language. We have a language between us that's sometimes telepathic, which is fun. But yeah, I think that, you know, my work is, because it's multidisciplinary and it's very collaborative, I always feel that it's incomplete without the totality of all of its parts and all of its players, that none of the designers or the design elements are there as ornamentation, that they're all elemental to the work. So I have that understanding from the beginning of the process. So I'm always considering, I try to have the designers in the room with me from day one. That doesn't always happen. We're a big team this time, so I've had many different residencies that were sort of in pockets. You know, one scenic residency, one with Luca, one with Soraya, the lighting designer, one with Sivan, the composer, and the dancers, and one with the costume designer, Sharifa and Erin. And then, you know, so I'm always sort of sensing how when choreographing and directing conceptually the work, the space that needs to be left for the voices to enter, the other voices to enter in. So I try not to crowd too much, but to direct well, hopefully.
It's your largest work to date, isn't it?
Yeah.
Both in terms of numbers of performers as well as scale of design and everything else.
Yeah.
I have to say, it's encouraging at a time when we see so many cutbacks and people needing to work small or to reduce scale of work, to see such a magnificent, you know, work of scale. And I wish I could say we were helpful in a limited way, but you really pulled together a lot of supporters. Were there ever moments when you felt like, oh, I've taken on too much, or is this a time, like, can we pull this off or not?
Yes, many moments. Because I had no intentions of creating a big work, you know. I had an idea, and I guess the idea was big, but it was more about digging into and excavating the idea and seeing what it becomes. I think that I understand the times that we're in and the limitations and cutbacks that are happening to the arts. Yet, as an artist, I'm committed to the work that I must do, right, and at the time that it must happen. And I think that I'm really insistent in that way. And I'm grateful that I have a team and supporters that allowed me to see this through. I think that when I dream, who dreams small? You know,
right.
Like you know, I dream big, and the actualization of the dream it becomes its own thing. And this happened to be the big dream turned into a big actualization. Yeah.
I'd love to invite you to talk also about the sound score. I think that the auditory experience is something that I have always really felt drew me into the performance. So can you talk a little bit about the auditory sound score experience of Marks of Red?
Yes, so I'm working with the musician Sivan Jakopovits. Sivan and I have also collaborated on many other works, Touch of Red, Black Hole. And most of the soundscape is composed by Sivan. There are other sources that are composed by other artists. One, Dorian Wood. She's an incredible vocalist and sort of very spiritual, deep, guttural, majestic voice. Like, wow, you know. It really feels that it's coming from this internal space. So she composed also part of the music for this soundscape. Ben de Gies, who's an electronic saxophonist from Norway who lives in Berlin. I was in Berlin and met him several times and seen him perform, and there's something about how he makes that saxophone well that is heart-wrenching to me, and I loved it. So he's also one of the musicians here. Klein, who is a black femme electronic musician based out of the UK. A lot of her music comes into this work too, and she has this really wide range of sonic expressions that kind of range from noise, ambient, electronic, hip hop, punk, rock. There's something really vast about the plethora of her electronic music offerings, and I feel a direct correlation between her work and the world that I'm creating in this work. So yeah, I think it's a sonic journey here, and the most sort of kaleidoscopic and voluminous.
Did all those composers, creators of sonic forms, allow you to do the final edit of how you mixed what, where, and when? Or do you have someone on your team who ultimately creates the sonic envelope for you?
Yeah, so I create the sonic envelope. I mean, I have an idea. I don't create it physically. I can't do that. But I have an idea of where things should happen in terms of sound. And I worked with a mixing and mastering engineer, right, whose name is Manny. He's also a techno DJ. I met him from nightlife. So he helped me to actually mix and layer and all of the tracks together, as well as making sure through mastering that the sound quality is up to par. Yeah.
I know you, early on in the creation of the work, you turned to 4 words to describe the sort of inspirational points, and they were butoh, sumo, techno, and womb. And we've kind of touched on techno and womb, and you referenced butoh. There's been, in Walker history, many butoh, including a Kazuo Ono performance way back in the day. But those both butoh and sumo are Japanese arts or sports forms, and I wondered if you could talk about your relationship with both of them and your history with butoh or your studies of it, and how you found both sumo and butoh influencing you in the making of this work.
Yeah, I've never studied butoh, and I'd say each of the 4 words that I mentioned as inspirations for this work are inspirations, not necessarily exploitations, right, not at all exploitations, or even appropriations. Mm-hmm. I think the first work I ever created, which was a solo called Black Box, so many people afterwards said to me that it reminded them of butoh, and I said, "What is that?" And I had no idea. So, but there is a sense, I guess, in the movement language and offering of my work that is connected to butoh. So I researched a lot of butoh, became really inspired by it. Also inspired by the realization that it was born out of the aftermath of World War II, right? So what happens in communities after a devastation, how does that manifest in the body? How does it live in the body? And how does that come up? Butoh has so much range of emotionality. Butoh is very underground. It digs into the grotesque, in dark spaces of our human existence. It sort of conjures that and purges that up in a really interesting way that moves me. It's kind of awestruck, and it's kind of terrifying in a beautiful way, in my opinion. So I think that with Marks of Red too, I was really interested in the range of emotionality and the sort of darkness and catastrophic, traumatic carrying of embodiment that could be offered that in this work that I received when I experienced butoh. And and also the sublime. There's something about this awestruck terror, like when you see nature, Mother Nature at work with like thunder and all of these elements coming together that are kind of chaotic, but then there's a beautiful mountain landscape, rainbow that's created. So that's my connection to butoh and hope for in relationship to butoh in this work. Yeah, it's sumo, you know, Japanese martial art form, wrestling. What I'm learning is that I have something to say about sports, which I don't know why.
Touch of red.
Yeah, touch of red
With boxing.
about boxing. I don't know. I think I'm just curious about sportsmanship and the act of competition or something, or the value of it. So with sumo, what I was really interested in is, you know, sumo are two heavily weighted individuals, entities that use their body's mass to sort of collide and crash into each other in order to knock them off of the ring. And what became interesting for me as I sort of subvert that idea of combat and competition was what happens when two bodies uses their stored energy to collide and crash into each other, and that moment of collision sort of collapses into a moment of embrace collectively. So that's what I'm interested in sumo. I think also my research of sumo and how they live, they're very communal. You know, they eat one big meal together, they live together, they are dynamic and caring and really sort of tribal. There's something really, sumo reminds me in some ways of these, you know, older ways of being with each other in communities, and I think that also comes out with the relationship with the dancers and each other.
It's fascinating. It's you know, we could talk all day here, but I know you have a premiere tonight. And Kristen, I wondered if you had a final or a question you really wanted to ask that we haven't gotten to yet.
You know, I think the one thing that we haven't talked about yet is the incorporation of some text from Claudia Rankine, and thinking about the words and the inspiration, and then thinking about Claudia's words, and the fact that that you met Mimi doing one of her plays. Maybe that's a way to kind of bring us full circle, and if you would be interested in talking about the text that you chose.
Yes, since working with Claudia on Help in 2020, her and I have become really close, very close friends, and admirers of each other. I've been a huge admirer of Claudia's work since I was young. So to be in proximity to her is kind of wow for me. And it's great that she's come to my performances too and have become an admirer of my work too. And she's also now a board member of Tribe, which is amazing. And we're constantly in conversation, in our conversations together, you know, always considering how to continue working together. So with Marks of Red, you know, I was thinking about text and spoken word voiceover, and I just was thinking about her text. You know, she's so poetic, and her words, they just dance so beautifully. So I asked her if she would be interested in offering text for this new work, and she's like, yes, I'm all in. So, you know, at first I was working with a text from her newest book that's coming out, and I read the manuscript and loved it and found so many correlations between her text and Marks of Red. And then through other conversations with Claudia, I think we were sort of like, I was sort of blocked, or I reached an obstacle of not understanding which text from her new book can go at which moment in Marks of Red. I was sort of forcing it a little bit. And I noticed I was forcing it, so I was letting go a little bit. And in that letting go, Claudia said, well, you know, I have this other book, a poetry called Plot. It's about pregnancy, childbearing, and artistic expression. And I said, Claudia, yes, this is it. And it is it. I read
Plot?
Plot, P-L-O-T, yes, which the womb space is also could be a place of a site of a plot, right, where soil, a space to fertilize and cultivate something into existence, into birth. So in reading plot, I was so mind blown, and there was immense alignment there. So I am using Claudia's text from plot, which would be spoken word voiceover by another artist that I love called More Mother, and she's part of Black Quantum Futurism collective, and yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, Kristen, I want to thank you for the original suggestion. We both were so fascinated with your work, Shamel. I had the crazy idea, like, let's do all three in the same year. Kristen said, how about we do one each year, which has really worked beautifully, and I just so appreciate your partnership, your generosity and artistry these last years, and we really appreciate your taking the time, not just for this talk, but for the community engagement aspects as well. So we so look forward to tonight's premiere.
Yeah, congratulations in advance on the birth of Marks of Red.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you, Philip.
Yeah, thanks, Kristen.